A big aloha and mahalo. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Pleasure's mine. Glad to be able to do this.
And you have you're one of my very favorite drummers. I play a little drum, so it's kind of
Uh-huh.
a special personal thing to get to talk to you. But before we get into some of the magic that you've done throughout your career, this is a special Crosswinds project you've got for folks who are curious about it. They know your name. They want to know the rundown of the program this time around. Give them a little idea what's in store and who you're playing with here.
Okay, the Crossroads Project, Scott Tibbs on keyboards, Fred Hawk playing guitar, Paul Hansen playing bassoon and soprano sax, Tim Landers playing bass, and myself. And it's the whole idea is to revisit the music that I created in 1973, 74 for the album Crosswinds, and we also pepper in a few other little bits and pieces that no one's heard before. And it's in line with the revisiting concepts that I'm doing now, and started with the Spectrum album. Hopefully, we'll continue on with the Total Eclipse album, which was the third record. But right now, we're touring the United States, and I can say happily, including Oahu and Honolulu, for the first time for me in 40 years that I've been there. And so I'm only, so far everything's been tremendously positive, and we're hoping to carry on the momentum. After Oakland and Santa Cruz, we come to you and continue on to Detroit. So here we go. We'll see how well we do.
You have you mentioned some stuff that people had not heard that'll be part of the presentation. Was that also from back when the Crosswinds album was being done, or
No, actually, it's new. It's material that I've just
new stuff?
currently working on, and as in the original material, it will resemble what we did, what I did in 1973, 74, but. Then, we morph. After 40 plus years, you can't just stay in the same place. It's boring. It's done. And we need to move on. So in this particular way, it's fresh. Not new, but fresh. And that's the way it should be.
Can you remember your previous Hawaii visits? You say it's been over 40 years. Is there anything that sticks out in your mind in terms of, were you here for the 73 Mahavishnu Santana tour at the Blaisdell Arena?
That's exactly right. And I was playing with Larry Young and Carlos Santana, John McLaughlin. I don't even know who else was on that tour. It was rather fascinating. But those guys I remember.
And did you play Great Memory? Did you play since then here, or is that it?
That was it, man.
That's
I never
incredible.
played there again.
Unbelievable. This is huge then, because I have, through the years, you can imagine, a couple different times. Once when John was on the show, and then Carlos has been on. Sometimes folks in the community, understandably, will write in with memories I haven't seen. And I remember one cat who lives all the way over on the Big Island in Hilo wrote a long thing all about seeing that show. He came all the way over to Honolulu to see you at the the Blaisdell for that show. So this is going to be special for folks. And you're talking about some of these important memories, I guess, is what these are that factor right into this current tour against Billy Cobham, Crosswinds Project, and reflecting on that monumental release that followed up his Spectrum album back in the early 70s. When I was studying you a little bit, it appears that one of these things you hear about a lot now is this early childhood exposure to different things, and for some people it makes a crucial thing. I mean, a lot of us didn't get any kind of exposure to something unique before 10, let's say, and then when I look at you, something that shaped you for the rest of your life, and you'll correct me if I have it wrong when I look at it, but a musician father, exposure to music leading to you starting the drums at 4, and then within several years you're accompanying him, all of this before 10 years old.
Right. I've been kind of blessed. So, getting to different situations. Well, my dad was a pianist, but that was all kind of by just a fun thing for him because he's more of a scientist. He's able to do pretty well with math and all, and so that's how we were able to survive. I had a pretty good job at the hospital, and but on the weekends he would go and just play whatever people put in front of him, and play and made them sound good. And some occasions there was no drummer, and just for fun. Say, what do you think? You want to go out and work? And I said, yeah, sure. Okay, come on, let's go. And put me up on a drum set that I could hardly touch with my feet, and more stand up and do whatever I could. And at the end, it stayed with me.
Why drums? Why not the piano? Was it because he got an accompaniment this way?
I can't say for sure, but two piano players in the house, I don't think would work. It was bad enough a drummer. Yeah?
Right.
Yeah.
No, it makes sense. And then you get a buddy to do something with. So, and then you're developing, you're a little bit older. Now you're finally doing it. You got the motivation to do it. Who are you listening to that's shaping you at this point, at this very young age?
Oh, everybody and anybody. I mean, from Sonny Payne to Roy Haynes to Dexter Gordon, Dizzy, Miles, whatever. Anything that came through the door that wasn't rock and roll, my father had it in the house.
And so it's his stuff. He's bringing it home. You're checking his stuff. So again, it's double ways he's influencing you, not only with the art of playing an instrument, but then the kind of music you might end up playing. And then there's this something else that factors. Again, this is all part of this topic of early childhood exposure, because all of it fits in, and including this next area, which is another remarkable way to take that a step further, and that is you went to a special school. Can you explain how that also factored into things?
Well, peer pressure, and in that special school, high school of music and arts, I was in the middle of I was right in the frying pan with people like Jimmy Owens, Eddie Gomez, Richard Tenwright, who everyone knew as Richard Key, the keyboard player, all of us in the same classroom. Larry Willis, there's so many people who played very, very well, far better than I could ever think of on their respective instruments, and so I could only learn from my peers. And at the High School of Music and Arts, for many, many years, since Fiorello LaGuardia created the school in New York City, a tremendous amount of artists that have gone to that school and gone on to reach greater heights through that particular institution. So I was very blessed.
Did they have concerts ever in their cafeteria where the kids would on their own put on little shows like to try to, you talk about that peer pressure, did they ever do little, it doesn't have to be the cafeteria, it could be a theater, some sort of place where the kids themselves would create either little tribute shows or little ensembles and invite each other to go watch?
No, where they did it was in the auditorium, where everybody had to sit there and watch it and critique them. And God help them if they didn't play well.
Right. You know why I ask? It's funny because the way you just told that whole thing about the peer pressure kicking it in that environment, and it's just because my buddy is a tour manager for this band Hailstorm, and they just played in here. I haven't seen them in a long time, but we used to go to college in Boston at Emerson, and we had friends at Berkeley, and on Saturday nights, some of the Berkeley kids who are like seniors or whatever would do their own little concerts in the cafeteria, like let's say a tribute to the band Rush, or a tribute to Genesis, or tribute to Santana, Almonds, etc. And so we were saying how that really pushed those kids, because you were not going to just get up on the stage in the cafeteria and do that unless you really knew what you were doing.
I agree.
I see what you're talking about, the peer pressure of just being surrounded by other cats who are all devoted to their thing.
Yeah, and also we had this one very special dimension where the school was in Harlem, so a lot of the black jazz musicians lived at that time up in that particular region or uptown Manhattan, and so it wouldn't be out of line for a Thelonious Monk to walk into the school auditorium and not even really knowing where he is, but he did, and we sat down and heard him play on stage after school hours, and he just played the piano a little bit, and of course that left an impression. We're all, to this day, I mean, we're just fundamentally kids anyway. When things like that happen, you remember.
Right.
And that creates your, how can I say, your mindset, who you are, what you've seen, and that's what you play from.
Yeah, that's some real shaping stuff. All these forces impacting you, and it helps to understand you a lot better after dissecting it a bit like this. And I never really knew, because it's kind of off the music path, but not really, because it ends up contributing in some way to it. I didn't know you were drafted for Vietnam. Is that how it happened in '65? You entered the Army?
I played in the United States Army Band, and we used to play and send people off from the Military Ocean Terminal, Brooklyn, to places like like South Asia and to Germany, as I was made to understand. And so I was very blessed to be able to contribute in the strongest manner that I could, which was as an artist, as a musician. And that was wonderful.
From there, how do you get the Horace Silver? I guess I'm missing something with the chronology, and forgive my math is not real good, but it looked like the Horace Silver gig came right after the Army.
Came immediately after the Army, because most of the people that I was associated with in the Army knew a lot of people outside the Army, and of course we were moonlighting our buns off to try to make up the difference in pay. The Army was gracious enough to give us $120 a month, and then it was up to you to figure out how to live from all of that with a family at the time. So a lot of word got around. You played your buns off, because every day was like your last day on earth if you didn't come up with something. And so you met people. And I happened to audition for Horace's band right out of the service, and I had already gotten out. And next thing you know, about 2-3 weeks later, I was on the road.
Unbelievable. When you look at that gig, because it leads to some of the biggest things of your career, follow that thing up. Is there a lesson in particular you got from that you hold to this day, or an experience that you go, oh, that served me well to at least prep me for what came next?
Mm-hmm. The main thing is maturity, and the fact that you have to be responsible for your moves. So I mean, if you're booked in to work with somebody, and you need to start at 8 o'clock, that means you don't come in at 8 o'clock to start at 8 o'clock. You come in at 7:30, and hopefully you'll start at 8 o'clock. You might still be late, depending on what instrument you're playing. So for me as a drummer, maybe it's 7 o'clock as opposed to that, at 7:30. These things you have to decide and make the right decisions and be responsible for your movements.
I love it. It's such great practical advice for people listening. It's a real community service in some ways when somebody answers something like that. And what led to the Miles? I know it wasn't like a lot of stuff, but it had to be like mind-blowing for you at the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, what led me to Miles was led to me, because I was working and he needed a drummer, and Jack DeJohnette recommended me and told Miles to come take a look, and told me that Miles would be coming in to check me out. He did at the Village Gate, and the rest is history.
And where'd you meet John McLaughlin?
I met him in 1968 at a club called Ronnie Scott's in London.
Wow, what a great place to, and I mean, what a formative relationship that would end up being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The Mahavishnu Orchestra. I mean, explain to us how that first came together, that this would be one of the critical stages of your career.
Well, again, it's coming from the foundation, the base and foundation of people getting to know who you are from witnessing what you do off stage for themselves, and then witnessing how you carry yourself, and then making an offer. Because it's a very delicate situation when it comes to connecting with other artists. You want to be sure that they're the right people whom you can relate to personally, on and off stage. Because you have very valuable thoughts and ideas that you don't want to have to spread around too often. So I was quite honored to be touched by John to poke me and say, hey, can you come in? I got a couple of things I'd like to work on, and I think I want to see if you can help me make heads or tails of it. And that also worked out very well. So that was good.
He is followed in your life, another remarkable guitar player. Not a lot of ways to hear about him except by people who cross paths with him. When I was a senior in high school, as a fan of Mahavishnu Orchestra in the fall of '88, and starting to love your playing, I got the Spectrum record. Blew my mind, the kind of sounds that Tommy Bolin would make on the guitar, and he's sort of this. A lot of people don't even know who he is today. Can you reflect on making a connection with him and producing work that to this day people look at it as this futuristic, undateable, timeless compositions?
Well, Tommy Bolin was an aberration for his age. I mean, 19 years old, and at the time that we met, and he was already working in a band called Zephyr and on the circuit, and I was in a band called Dreams. And it turned out to be, when we heard them, they were opening. They were one of, I think it might have been the first. The Zephyr was the opening act on a bill that had about, that closed with Grand Funk Railroad, and we're somewhere in the middle of all of that. And so we sat around at this big, I don't think it was Daytona's, but it was like NASCAR, kind of a racetrack, and that's where they were having the festival. And we heard this guy playing guitar, but he was manipulating the guitar with an Echoplex, and I'd never seen that before. He was a very, very young person, and I went, wow, and Randy and Michael Brecker were there, and they said, get out of here, who is this? So, of course, we were so curious, we went over, and next thing you know, we were really good friends, and he came to New York, and we played as long as we could, here or there. I had him do the record with me. As soon as he made the record, I think it was Deep Purple picked him up, or the James Gang, somebody like that, and that was the end of it. I never got a chance to play with him again. Yeah.
Unbelievable. And your paths never crossed again, because he only lived a few more years.
Only off stage, hey, how you doing, blah, 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 but not much more,
You look back on that, it sounds like you look back on it pretty fondly, because he was just one special cat, kind of like a Randy Rhoads almost, I think of, like just a very...
Yeah, he was a real special person, and at 25 years old, he was playing like a guy that was 50, that had been through a lot of experiences, and he could tell you the blues, no trouble. He knew all the right notes to play at the right time. That's not easy.
Great tribute to him like that. Great tribute to say that about him. And the approach to Crosswinds, so to me, as a fan, sounded so different than that. Was that almost intentional? Were you like, I got to explore something completely different after doing this? Or what was that?
The whole thing about music is with Crosswinds and anything else I write, is, especially if I revisit it, the first time is like first impression. But when you want to add something, sometimes it takes time to go through some experiences to find some information to add to the information that's already there. More often than not, that's how I work. So I write all of my material with the idea that I'll revisit it at some point if I have the opportunity. And because I don't even know how to write hits. If it happens, then it's really a luck thing. So I'm always just looking back at things and going, wow, I wonder what would happen if I did this, especially with this band configuration. How would this change everything? And that keeps my mind fresh and my ideas consistent, with the mainstream. That's what it's all about for me.
It's a legendary Billy Cobham, his Crosswinds project at the Blue Note this weekend. I really appreciate your time today here on All Things Considered.
I enjoyed doing this, but what I'm doing with you is fun.
Great talking to you today. Thank you so much, Billy.
Stop by if you have a chance. We can talk some more when I get there. Just follow up that way, okay?
I'd love it. Thank you, brother. You be safe.
All right, you take care.